Okay, hi, it's Heather Boyd from Nurture Squared, and today I get to meet with Louise Gleeson, a writer from Oakville, who has set aside the next 30 minutes to chat with me about parenthood and writing and freelancing and entrepreneurship and all the challenges that come with all of that. As a background, Louise started out as a health and science writer, which should interest a lot of us that are in the health field. With a science background in particular, and that was after graduating from journalism school in the early 2000s. But she naturally shifted to writing about parenthood and about family life when she became a mother, and eventually a mother of four. So currently she's a regular contributor at Today's Parent magazine, as well as a number of other online magazines and lifestyle blogs. And she lives east of Toronto with her four kids and her husband, and they have a rambunctious dog at home as well. So Louise, thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to get to talk with you today.
Thank you for having me. Rambunctious dog may enter the room at any given time, so he may have a cameo.
Well, and I'll add that my rambunctious kids may enter the camera at any time too. So
lucky me, mine are at school.
So I thought I would start, I know that I've been following your writing for some time, and we've been in touch just informally online for a number of years. And I'm curious to know, just in terms of your writing career and as a busy parent of four kids who are involved in lots of activities, how difficult it is to get into the writing field. Wonder if you can speak to this idea of perseverance when it comes to having a vision that you want to achieve, but getting around all the hurdles that come with
that. That's a loaded question right out of the gate.
I start big.
Like, if I had to say, where do I find my perseverance to keep going? Because it is a constant juggling act. It's that I know I'm not a happy parent or contributing household member if I don't do what I like to do. That's kind of separate from all of that. And that's what kept me going in the wee hours of the night when the kids were really young. That's what allowed me to come to my desk after a long day of chasing the kids around and just being full-time parent, because it was a reprieve from that. And I'm very lucky that the work I do feels that way for me. I'm also very lucky that I can do that work in lots of different spaces, physical spaces and time spaces, I guess you could say. When they were little, a lot of my writing happened at night. And that's actually where the name of my original blog kind of came from, is that 90% of my work was done when it was dark out. And what kept me at it was knowing that I was a more well-rounded person and happier, and that I knew when the kids got bigger and didn't need me as much, I really wanted to still have that. And I really wanted it not to get too quiet or to lose my voice. I wanted to keep using it so that when I was really ready to kind of take off again in a more full-time capacity, I still had my voice and my identity as a writer, if that makes sense. Was that a good long-winded answer?
Absolutely, especially when I think of how many physical spaces I'm trying to get my work done, and mental spaces too.
And I had to learn to just be adaptable, I guess. If I really wanted to keep at it, I had to give up a lot of what it used to look like for me before I became a parent. Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. Well, and in terms of writing too, it tends to be a very solitary activity. And
it really is, yeah.
Yeah, and being at home with kids can feel very isolating as well.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to that balance of, writing and reaching out and staying connected?
Reaching out to like fellow writers?
Yes, or just reaching out socially or staying connected outside of your writing while still having that protected time at home to have time to think and ponder.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say I was like a split person. So I think I'm very skilled at just being with my kids when I'm with my kids. And in that sense, I've nurtured lots of relationships that are tied to my experience as a mother, as a parent. I have a lot of rich friendships and a lot of day-to-day social interactions that are completely tied to my identity as a parent. But then, of course, they all feed and enrich my role as a writer, especially as my writing shifted towards motherhood and parenthood and family life. They've informed that storytelling, because if I wasn't out there and interacting and building relationships and having day-to-day experiences with other parents, I could only ever see parenthood through my own lens, and that wouldn't make me a very good storyteller. My stories are my stories, and they certainly give a unique perspective, but my story isn't the only story of parenthood. And again, if I go back to that central theme, I'm a better parent when I'm taking in experiences of others around me. I'm a better writer, I'm a better parent. And so they really complemented one another. As far as staying connected to other writers, I thank God for the internet because it wasn't easy for me to get out to networking events or to attend, a lot of in-person sessions when they were little. And even now, they're not little, but they're extremely busy and they take up a lot of my time. And I say that with love. And so there are a lot of fantastic online writing groups that I belong to. I have some personal writing groups with like-minded writers that I touch base with once a day, once a week, whatever it may be. And we help to keep each other going, and we help to give each other perseverance and feedback. And I think it's essential to have your networks that are just about your work and your passion, maybe separate from what you do as a person or as a parent.
Right. Well, and as you're talking, I'm picturing something like an infinite feedback loop
It
where
is.
connecting with other parents, you're bringing back new ideas and calm
Always.
patients. And then
Yeah.
the stories that you have, the reason that you're a good writer is because what you write about resonates with those that are reading about it.
Yes. Yes. That's my total raison d'etre when I'm writing about parenthood specifically, is not just to tell my story. If I tweak an idea or a feeling in a reader that says, I didn't think of it that way, I didn't see my child like that, or I didn't consider that situation through that perspective, I'm so thrilled that that's exactly what I want, because again, it's not just about sharing my narrative, it's about opening ideas and starting conversations about, because I really believe we raise children as a collective and as a society and as a village, and that's really what I want my writing to do.
Right. Yes, and it's neat how that does change over time with the internet and connection, because
Yeah.
that shared collective and village may look very different than it
Yeah.
used to, but it still is
Mm-hmm.
a village.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that you pointed out a few minutes ago, and it really resonates with me because it comes through so loud and clear in your writing, is your ability, despite all the distractions and to-do lists and chaos, of being fully present with your kids. And as someone who struggles with that, as I start up my practice and I want to spend that intense, uninterrupted time developing my mastery and my craft, how do you have any insights or reflections on how to be fully present with our kids despite also having this vision and drive to reach out and write and connect with others?
Oh, that's a tough question.
We could talk all day.
Again, it, briefly, just to touch on the very first point I made, is that I just had to accept that in order to continue both the way I wanted to, and I'm not perfect, I've made lots of mistakes, is just setting that time aside when the kids weren't with me or when they didn't need me, and understanding that that would always be shifting. I think we can get very frustrated, when they're little and you're literally feeding them of your own body, and they need constant hand over hand and supervision. I think you can just feel, I'm never going to get ahead, and everyone else is racing ahead of me. But I'm a little bit further on my journey than you are with parenthood and maybe even my career. And it's just a chapter, right? And you really have to focus on the fact that this is not your constant state. It's flex. So yes, I'm working at 1 o'clock in the morning on a story idea I have, because I really want to get it out there, and it matters to me to be able to tell it. Um, but 2 years from now, when my little one isn't up in the night, I'm not going to have to do this. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it is so true. Everything is a season. And if you could, for me, it was embracing, think of everything I'm learning about parenthood and motherhood in this really intense period. And I really wanted to be able to stop with the distractions and study what was happening around me. Really like watch my kids and learn from my kids, because I knew it would inform me as a writer in my creative endeavors. When I had an hour at 1 o'clock in the morning to tell that story, I wouldn't have a story to tell if I wasn't in that story myself. And it wouldn't be authentic if I wasn't in that story myself. I also had the maybe fair or unfair advantage of raising my little tiny ones without social media. It didn't exist. Um, I think there's a lot of pressure on young mothers who are entrepreneurs to be constantly connected, to be constantly responsive and dialed in and interacting and engaging. And I actually feel very lucky that that wasn't asked of me and it wasn't required of me. If I wasn't physically sitting at my desk, nobody knew what I was doing. And I could be at that 6-hour play date with a girlfriend sitting on cross-legged on her floor while we threw, food at our kids, doing absolutely nothing, but it was everything at the same time, if that makes sense.
That's beautiful. Yes, it
Yeah.
absolutely makes sense. And I know, you've said it feels like a cliche, but it doesn't seem to matter how often I hear that when it's presented, you say it's a chapter, it's one
It is.
chapter.
Yeah.
It may be repeated and said an awful lot, but it is because it needs to be repeated and said an awful lot. And so even today, it's another refreshing reminder to just be present. And that part of my role, thankfully, professionally, is boosted by my ability to parent better and pay attention.
Yeah.
Something else you said too is that idea of paying attention. As a writer, your ability to observe is critical. So the
Yeah.
fact that you're writing about families and raising families and being a parent, being able to just observe and be present with your family, I can
Yes.
see how that would make a big difference.
And I think you can marry your work and your time with your children. For me, for example, I would always have a notebook close by. I still do. I always have one in my bag. So let's say I have a very interesting interaction with one of my children driving in the car somewhere. Um, it's okay for me, once I've delivered that child safely to wherever we're going, to pull that notebook out and write that down. I may not work on that story or that idea or what that made me feel that day. I may not get to it till a month later, but it's okay that they overlap sometimes. I don't have to run away and write that story. It's kind of timeless, right? But I do have to be in that moment with my child. And whether that remains a private moment for us that I hold on to in that notebook, or whether it parlays itself into a story that I think might touch another parent in some way, I never know. I never know where it's going to go. But those are little tricks, right, that I've learned to pick up. I also use the Notepad app on my phone. So I may hit the dictation button and just say, blah, 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 blah. And again, I might go back to that 3 months from now being, what was I trying to say? Or, I take that story and I go with it, or I build upon it, or I talk to other parents about, well, what's that like for you? I may have school age children now, but they are still teaching me every single day. They are still taking, and they're 4 very different children. So child one's experiences and journeys that she's been on with me have been totally different from child number 3. And it's so rich, right? And I know we've talked about this briefly too, but as they're older, that storytelling has obviously had to shift as well. So
Right.
I'm in a
Yes.
constant state of chaos and flux over here.
Well, and it's inevitable too, and I think it would be as challenging as it is to forever be adjusting and tweaking and adapting, that if we're not in a position where that's required of us, I imagine that life would get pretty mundane pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
You spoke about, keeping these tips about keeping track of our ideas, which I think for a lot of us, I have so many ideas that are floating out there and I'm grabbing them out of my head and getting them down. I wonder if you have any tricks on how to revisit them, because I can just imagine that, my notepad on my phone has all these random thoughts that are kind of lost somewhere in all those gigabytes. This is a very practical question, really, but
Oh, I have some tips. I do.
Fantastic.
So if I've captured a quote or something funny that one of my kids have said, and I've put it on my notepad, on my phone, or I've written it in my journal that I carry around in my bag, if I really feel like it's going to turn into something like a pitch idea for an editor, or a story or a personal essay or something like that I want to write, I do make it a priority to come to my physical office space or my computer. I have a folder on my desktop at all times called drafts. I open a new document, I post in that quote or that experience that I've shared with my child, or sometimes it has nothing to do with children. It might be about marriage or relationships, or a memory I've had of my own parent, or my own childhood. And then I might write down, what kind of experts do you think could speak to this? And just a bulleted list of ideas that are flowing in the moment when I'm feeling that experience. And they all go into a folder called essay drafts, or pitch drafts. And then when I find that pocket of time, or if that idea is still buzzing and it's not leaving me alone, I know that's when I have to get in there and do something about it. I open up that folder on a Wednesday afternoon when I've said from 9 to 12, I'm sitting at my desk, and I pull it out and I work on it a little bit more. But I don't put too much pressure on myself to finish it. I just keep working on it, and I keep it in that physical folder on my desktop until it's ready to go into an email, to an editor, as a pitch idea, or to go wherever I think it needs to go. But when those ideas are happening, get them down on paper somewhere. But don't beat yourself up if it doesn't turn into a finished product the very same day. It won't. You're a mother. It can't.
One of the things that I love about these interviews, Louise, is that it always seems to feed back into a point that has come up in previous interviews too. And all I keep thinking about as you talk is Lucy Colangelo talking about, it doesn't exist if you don't write it down.
That's right.
Because it's a fleeting thought. And I can just picture, if I did that, opening up, these preliminary wild thoughts that aren't well articulated, but that constitute an ability to just add to instead of try to create from nothing.
Yeah, let go of perfection. Just picture like little idea bubbles that you're pulling down from the clouds, and just get them on paper. And then they grow. You water them, you feed them, and they grow, just like your kids, right? They don't have to be fully formed and perfect. Just take, the dimples, like the dimples on the back of your child's hand. They made you feel something. That's it. Just write that down. That's it. The dimples on the backs of her hand. Who knows? The idea may go in a completely new direction. But the point is, you felt something. And if you feel something, you're more apt to keep working on it. At least for me.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. I love it. I'm curious, though, to go back to this idea of social media, because we all, I think, have this love-hate relationship with it. It provides such an opportunity for especially isolated parents at home to make connections. But then, as you say, the intense pressure and the confusion around either feeling inadequate or feeling overwhelmed and confused is a huge deal. That didn't even be an issue. And at this point, I'm pulling back from social media significantly, so I'm excited to see how it goes. But certainly, in hearing you talk about how different it is than when your first child was born, what do you do, especially as a writer, where part of your work is getting your material online and part of your job is to be aware of what's going on online? How do you strike a balance that gives you the richness of social media without the disadvantages of it?
I have a third element that I have to be mindful too in that whole story. And in that is, I'm constantly aware of how my habits are being observed by my children. So, wow, it's an intense topic. I have a very simple mantra that I use for myself. Does this feel like connection or expectation?
Mm.
If it's not connection and it only feels like, and sometimes there can be an overlap of both, of course. If it doesn't feel like connection, I'm not into it. It's that simple. I don't want to feel expectation around that space. That space is my space. That is where I tell my stories. I get to be the narrator of that space. I get to be a role model for my children who are just traveling into that world. That's very important for me. I actually think that it's a way of connecting with them too. It's a way of teaching them how to navigate the world. And again, I never pretend to be perfect, but it's a way of teaching my children how to navigate the world and share my vulnerabilities and my stories. They're watching me, they're watching how I'm doing that. So again, if it doesn't feel or look like what I feel is a good connection, I'm not into it. I'm not interested. So I had to let go of feeling the weight of expectation. If a story doesn't happen because I didn't cave to those feelings of expectation, it really wasn't meant to be for me. I just use my instincts.
I think I might print that up and really big permanent marker on the Bristol board and stick it up, I don't know, in various places of my house to remind myself of that. I
Yeah,
think I think we probably all resonate with that idea, even if we haven't actually turned that into action. So
yeah.
I think that's really useful mantra. Um, I wonder too, most of us in Nurture Squared are not writers, although we may dabble in it as a way of blogging some material or, writing presentations. I wonder if you could speak to the idea of the potential of writing just as a personal or rather private yet professional therapeutic tool for our own professional growth or personal growth, if that makes sense.
Like,
Not writing for others, but using writing personally as a tool for our own growth.
I think everybody should be writing. I wish everybody would, especially in a private sense. I think we hold too much inside and it's not healthy. And again, if I can go back to that word connection, I think if you have a story to tell that resonates with others, people don't care about the grammar and the proper structure. If you're telling a story authentically or sharing your work or your knowledge in a way that's just honest and authentic, I think we can be afraid to be judged about how that writing comes together. But I would say on the most part, people are genuinely looking for connection. So whether you're taking that out beyond your own private space or you're using it in your own private space, writing is a way of collecting your thoughts and your feelings and your observations of the world, putting them all together and getting them out of your head, where they can turn into things that are difficult to manage, if that makes sense. So I do journal. I filled tons and tons of journals. I write a lot of essays that never actually leave. Hello. I write a lot of essays that never leave that draft folder. They just sit in there, and that's okay too, right? I felt something when I had that moment and I put it in that draft folder. And if it stays there forever, it's okay. It did something for me.
You gonna say hi? um, well, and that's, I know so many of us have either gone through spurts of journaling and found it helpful, and then it's sustaining it that's a challenge. But I think, yeah,
Well,
that, but
for lots of people, blogging is just an online journal, and that's a-okay, because if you're online journaling, which is what blogging is for me, and you find a community or others find themselves in your stories, then that's a beautiful thing. That's connection to me. I love that.
That's beautiful. Um, and as well, I know that, in terms of the blogging, and I hadn't really thought of it as an online journal before. So that changes the next question I was going to ask you, which was around those that do want to do more professional writing, not necessarily as a paid professional or freelancer or writer for a magazine, but as someone who may be wanting to add some materials on a blog or written materials for sharing information or sharing ideas.
Right.
Do you have any tips on honing the skill of writing? Now, I know you've just said, don't worry as much about perfection or grammar, make your message count. But in terms of the actual mechanics of writing and getting our ideas out clearly enough to communicate what we're trying to communicate, do you have any suggestions on honing that?
Find some friends who are really good at reading your writing. So I think oftentimes we're very passionate about our subject matter. And so we're just trying to get all that information out. And then it may be that it makes perfect sense to you as you're sharing it. But it's always good to get a second person in to say, I don't know what you mean by that, or I need you to explain this a little bit more. If you have a trusted group, like the best thing ever is to have a little group of people that you're sharing your work with, that you trust to give you honest feedback. When you read this post about this topic that I care a lot about, did you understand what I was trying to say? Were there any gaps? Just let me know, and choose a group of 5 like-minded individuals. I share my drafts with other writers, even though I'm a writer, I guess. Even I still need someone to tell me, was I making sense? And there are even in the professional world of writers, nothing goes to publication without going through several set of eyes, right? So I don't pretend to be successful in publishing articles all by myself. I have very talented editors who say, I think I know what you're saying in this paragraph, but I don't. So can you elaborate, or can you get another expert in? No story is written alone before it hits publication. My editors are everything. And every time I work with one, I become a better writer. I become better at my storytelling. Because again, we're human beings, and everything we share or say or write or communicate is always through our own little bubble of thinking, or the way we view the world. And so I would say your best bet is to, build a community of like-minded people that you trust with your work, and who you can accept feedback from in a very positive and lifting kind of way. And say, listen, I'm going to do this for you. You're going to do this for me. And just get that help. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And again, it resonates with so many other threads that have been coming up in other
Yeah.
interviews around feedback and the helpfulness of open, honest, and not feedback that doesn't leave you raw and vulnerable in a way that breaks you down, but that builds you up and keeps you going.
So maybe, like, you wouldn't want to put your work, if you weren't a professional writer and you were a bit nervous about that, just choosing people that have your best interests at heart. Can you read this and tell me, was there anything missing, or did you not understand it, or is there anything that you think I could do a better job of explaining? It's like a life mantra: keep the people around you that make you feel good.
Absolutely. Good, yes. Well, and it brings me to one, I know we're a little bit over time. We started a few minutes late, so can I indulge you in one more?
Yes.
You indulge me in one more question. The idea of getting in the habit of writing, which, whether it applies to professional or journaling, or just keeping track of the funny or awesome things my kids say. Do you have any life hacks for the habit of writing?
Carry a journal. So the journal, my best idea, I always joke with my group of writing friends offsite. My best ideas come to me in the minivan when I'm driving, and in the shower. And why would that be? Oh, because no one's talking to me. And so I don't know why, but that's where my best ideas come to me. I have to be able to put that onto paper or into my notepad on my phone right away, because in about 10 seconds, somebody's going to come and interrupt me, and that feeling or that idea is going to be poof, gone. So those are just very tactile, like real life hacks. You must carry a pen and paper wherever you go. Put them in the glove box of your car, keep them in your diaper bag, your backpack, your purse, whatever it is you carry. Bedside table is another great place to keep one. I have them everywhere. And then, yeah, that notepad on my cell phone, wow, that was revolutionary. That's something I do love about that is I carry a phone with me, and it's an instant recording tool, and it's amazing. I have pages and pages of ideas in my notepad function right now. Um, I have a partner who's very supportive. So that means after our family routines have wound down for the night, I might say, you know what, I have a bunch of ideas bouncing around. I know I haven't seen you all day, but today I just really need to keep going. I've got the motivation or the drive or the feeling of perseverance right now. And he's really good about that. And my kids are older now, right? So I'm lucky that way. I've carved out a physical space where they're not invited to come unless there's something really pressing happening. What did that look like 10 years ago? I didn't have this. I couldn't. My desk was in the corner of our most trafficky room in the house, our family room, so that I could see my children at all times.
Mm-hmm.
You just constantly have to roll with the punches, right?
It really does evolve. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
That hits on just the point that sometimes there's a degree of impatience that it's not going smoothly, but again, to remind ourselves that this is a chapter and that we do what we can when we can do it, and it will change over time and morph into something entirely different.
And also remember that all those little mundane and ordinary experiences that you're having as a parent, as a friend, as a daughter, as a sister, as whatever your role may be in that moment, they all inform how you do your work. None of them are a waste of your time. None of those moments are a waste of your time. Every single one of them shapes who you are and how you approach the work that you do outside of those roles. So don't let that frustration build. Remember that they're building your character and they're making you better at everything that you do.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
I know our time is up, but I wanted people to know how to get in touch with you if they're wanting to reach out or to read what you've already written and put out in the world.
Yeah, so just Google my name. It's that easy. On Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. It's just Louise Gleeson with 2 E's. You can find me there. You can see samples of my writing. I love to hear from people when they read something that I've written. I especially love to hear that, ooh, I hadn't thought of that, or I hadn't seen it that way, or I'm actually looking forward to having middle schoolers and teenagers. Everything I've heard has been so scary, but you make it not so scary. I'm actually looking forward to some of that. So I love to hear from people, and I'd love to hear from any of your lovely followers as well.
Well, I'll be sure to post the link to the video once we get it up and going.
Yay.
So I just want to say thank you for your time today. I'm going to be re-listening to this just for those life hacks and for the big picture.
So sweet. Just go out and buy 5 notebooks right now.
Thank you again, Louise.
Thank you, Heather.
Bye now.
Bye.